About a week ago, the New York Times published a poll of Tea Party participants across the country. We do not spend a lot of time talking about polls on this show, especially polls of social movements that don't have formal membership and are pretty loosely defined. But there was one thing written up in that poll that has stuck with me that I can't really get out of my head. This is from the end of the New York Times synopsis of their findings. Nearly 3/4 of those who favor smaller government said they would prefer it, even if it meant spending on domestic programs would be cut. But in follow-up interviews, I cannot get this out of my head. Tea Party supporters said they did not want to cut Medicare or Social Security, the biggest domestic programs, suggesting instead a focus on, quote, waste. That's a conundrum, isn't it? Asked Jodine White, age 62, of Rockland, California. I don't know what to say. Maybe I don't want smaller government. I guess I want smaller government and my Social Security. She added, I didn't look at it from the perspective of losing things I need. I think I've changed my mind. Right there on the spot, talking to the New York Times pollster. It's sort of perfect, isn't it? Whatever you think about the Tea Party protests and their tactics, now they get their message across. This right here has been one of the persistent centrist and liberal critiques of the Tea Party movement and this whole Obama-era anti-government uprising on the right. That sort of blatant, clear as day contradiction. Get your government hands off my Medicare. Get the government out of my life. Don't touch my Social Security. These are not apocryphal stories. I mean, made up by liberals, right? This lady really is wearing a taxpayer revolt T-shirt while holding a sign that reads, don't touch my Medicare. She's not a staffer on the show. We did not make her up. This guy really did direct people to throw bricks through the windows of Democratic Party offices to protest there being too much government while he is living on Social Security disability payments, which you might know are from the government. It's a contradiction that's present even in the way these folks choose to articulate their protest against the government. For example, the march on the National Mall in Washington, D.C., which even while it's being used as a staging ground for anti-government protesters, is a government-funded national park. Protesters last week inveighing against government encroachment on private property while standing on probably the most famous piece of public property in America. It even has a commie-sounding name, the Boston Common. Common, get it? One of the country's oldest national parks. On Monday, anti-government protesters showed off their right to bear arms in a government-funded state park in Virginia. You might remember when Tea Party folks converged on Washington, D.C. for the big 9/12 anti-government march last year. In addition to using a national park for the site of their protest, one of the great footnotes to that protest were the complaints by many 9/12 protesters that the public transportation system that they used in D.C. to get to their anti-government march, they didn't feel was up to their standards. Here's how we covered it at the time. Occasionally you come across something when you're reading the news that can't be improved upon with comment. So here, without comment, is from today's Wall Street Journal. Quote, protesters who attended Saturday's Tea Party rally in Washington are unhappy with the level of service provided by the subway system. Republican Congressman Kevin Brady asked for an explanation of why the government-run subway system didn't, in his view, adequately prepare for the rally to protest government spending and government services. Seriously. That's not me saying seriously. That's in the Wall Street Journal. The ostensibly principled position these folks are taking is that they want smaller government. They want government to do less. And just because so many of them are retired Medicare and Social Security recipients who get to their protests in national parks via public mass transit, don't let that get in the way of their anti-government message. When you are shown to demonstrably not believe something you say you believe, that's hypocrisy. And reasonably speaking, it should undermine your claim that you're acting on principle. You can't say you hate government-run healthcare, for example, and then profess your love for Medicare. It is one or the other, or you don't make any sense.